Hey guys, tonight we're trading soft pillows for stone beds, sweet dreams for scented oils, and a glass of warm milk for the clatter of sandals in a Roman alley. You're lying on your side right now, maybe tucked in, maybe scrolling, but tonight, imagine you're sprawled on uneven cobblestones, the scent of overripe figs and yesterday's fish curling into your nose, a tangle of grape skins crushed under your cheek. Welcome to the first waking moments of a Roman prostitute's day. You probably won't survive this, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. I love knowing who's listening out there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before sunrise because you have to. The city of Rome never really sleeps, but there's a brief hush just before the streets fill with iron wheels and barked orders. Your back aches from the stone threshold you fell asleep against. Someone's cat, possibly yours, depending on the day, slips over your foot with a yawn. The alley is already damp with 1,000 untraceable leaks. You stretch. You ache. You wince at the smear of red clay stuck to your elbow. Hopefully clay, you're not exactly part of high society. But you've got your niche. You're what the Romans called a meretrix, a registered prostitute, though not always willingly. You don't work in a villa, and you definitely don't wear the perfume-scented silks of elite courtesans. You work in one of Rome's lupanaria, brothels tucked into the underbelly of city blocks, sometimes right next to bakeries, temples, or worse, fishmongers. Your tunic's already stained from the previous day, marked by the thin red thread that labels you for what you are. It doesn't exactly whisper subtlety. More of a shout, really. Roman law requires it, the red stitching, or at least something distinctive. It's like wearing a neon sign over your body in a world that hasn't invented neon yet. The first thing you do isn't makeup. Or prayers. Or food. You check your stash of coins. Hidden beneath a cracked roof tile, they're still there, 6 asses and 1 sad, worn-down sestertius. Enough for watered wine and maybe a piece of yesterday's bread. Not enough for a new pair of sandals, which you badly need because yours lost a strap last week, and now you walk like you've stepped on a nail. The lupanar is only a few blocks away, but you take the longer route. Why? Because that avoids the bakery, and the baker's son who once tried to impress you by juggling hot loaves and ended up singeing off his eyebrow. You still have to see his smirk every time he passes. No thanks. Down the quieter street, you nod at Tertia, another girl from your brothel. She's older, always up early, always humming the same off-key tune. She used to be a singer, or so she claims. Now she just sings to herself as she checks her teeth in a cracked bronze mirror. The brothel doesn't exactly gleam. The door hangs slightly crooked. Inside, faded wall paintings depict idealized couples, blush-worthy positions frozen in time with all the anatomical flair of a toddler's drawing. It's all part of the show. The frescoes say fun, but the rooms say sell. You've got a cubicle about the size of a Roman bath bucket, with a thin straw mattress and a small oil lamp that smokes more than it glows. You grab the bucket. Not glamorous, but necessary. There's no running water, so you fetch it from the public fountain around the corner, which doubles as a washing place, drinking hole, and dog bath. Multitasking, you rinse your face, scrubbing at yesterday's face paint and whatever that smell is. A touch of rose oil at the temples, a luxury, but you stretched the bottle for weeks. Clients expect you to smell better than the street. Not good, necessarily. Just, better. Someone passes and mutters lupa under their breath. It means she-wolf, the polite Roman term for your profession. Depending on tone, it can sound exotic or like a curse. You've heard both, sometimes from the same person. Back in the brothel, the madam is up. She's never slept there, of course. She has a real home, tiles, proper chairs, maybe even a second tunic. She eyes your face and your posture and your sandals and everything in between with that particular managerial disappointment that's oddly universal. Even 2,000 years later, smile more, she says. You do, though it probably looks like indigestion. This isn't the only kind of sex work in Rome. There are levels, like a social ladder, only the rungs are oily, slippery, and probably bug-infested. You've got the meretrices, like you, who are technically legal and taxed. Then there are scorta, the streetwalkers who operate without licenses and are always one step from being hauled off by the urban prefect. Above you, there are the delicati, high-end courtesans who sometimes write poetry, charm philosophers, and wear perfumes that cost more than your lifetime earnings. You've never met one, but you've seen them from a distance, gliding through the forum in cloaks that shimmer in the sun. You once tried to copy the way one of them walked. It took a solid 5 minutes before you tripped on your own tunic hem and landed in donkey manure. So, lesson learned, what do you think about, as you prep for the day? Not much, honestly. Thinking gets in the way. You run through your prices in your head. Short time, full time, special requests. The madam takes her cut no matter what. You dream sometimes about stashing enough to buy your own space. Maybe near the baths. Maybe far from the baths. Maybe somewhere where no one knows what the red thread means. The city starts to hum louder now. Wheels, hooves, sandals. You catch the scent of roasting grain, sweet pine resin from a temple burner, and something pungent you can't identify but definitely wish you couldn't smell at all. You're hungry. You always are. The madam throws you a crust of something and mutters about saving your energy. You chew. It's stale, but it's calories. As you head to your cubicle, a new girl walks in. She looks lost. She'll learn. You did. It takes about 3 days to stop crying, 1 week to stop hoping, and a month to learn the real currency here: silence, timing, and whatever charm you can fake between waves of exhaustion. Historians still argue whether brothels like this one were always state-sanctioned, or if many operated in the gray spaces of legality and bribery. Either way, they were as common as bakeries, and sometimes more popular. Quirky fact. Some brothel tokens, spintrii, have been found in ancient ruins, marked with explicit images and numbers. Kind of like a punch card system, but with less free coffee and more awkward cleanup. You lie back on the straw mattress, staring at the ceiling. There's a spider up there. You leave it. You've seen worse company, footsteps in the hall. The day is starting. You hear the door creak open, your first customer of the day. Or maybe your second. Time blends here. You don't remember sleeping much, just dozing in shifts between late stragglers and early risers. The lamp sputters as you sit upright, brushing straw from your legs and adjusting your tunic, though let's be honest, it never really sits right anymore. The shoulder seams are loose, and the necklines seen better days. But who's here for the fashion? It's early morning in Rome, the hour when the sun barely limps over the tiled rooftops, casting everything in that weak, dusty orange light that makes your cubicle look almost charming, if you squint. The city is waking, but you're already mid-shift. You never know who's going to walk through the curtain. Sometimes it's a merchant who's stopped in for a quick indulgence before market. Other times, a soldier in town between campaigns, smelling like sweat and iron. Or maybe it's a skinny philosophy student who asks you existential questions during the act and tries to pay you in poetry. Cute. Useless. Very common, this one's a baker. You can tell by the flour on his sandals. He grins at you with that half-proud, half-awkward tilt of the head that says he's either trying to be charming or has forgotten your name again. Probably both. You go through the motions. It's never passionate. It's not even personal. It's like performing a scene in a very repetitive play. Some days you feel present, aware of every breath, every groan, every flicker of the oil lamp's flame. Other days you drift, like your mind floats just above your body, watching yourself perform the same service with the same size, like a ghost with really boring afterlife duties. It's over quickly, because of course it is. He pays in coins still warm from his tunic pocket. Not enough, but you know better than to argue. You say something flirtatious because that helps him feel special. That's the trick, after all. You don't sell the act, you sell the illusion that it mattered. That he mattered. You're an actress in a city obsessed with status, and the stage is your cubicle. You wipe down the straw mat with a damp cloth. Not because it helps much, but because it helps a little. The madam keeps vinegar in a cracked amphora near the door for that reason. One splash, one swipe, one nose-wrinkling inhale. In the hallway, someone sneezes. You hear laughter from a neighboring room. Tertia again. She always gets the chatty ones. You like her. Or maybe you just like the fact that she once scared off a violent client with nothing more than a hairpin and a warning look. The morning rush picks up as the city warms. Rome is alive with noise now, chickens squawking, water sellers shouting, iron-shod wheels screeching against stone. Somewhere down the street, a group of boys are pretending to be gladiators, complete with sticks and the occasional dramatic fall. You dodge between customers, gossip, and the occasional rat. The floor is cracked, and the air smells faintly of olive oil, sweat, and disappointment. But still, there's something rhythmic about it. Routine, if not exactly peaceful. By late morning, things slow. The wealthier clients don't come during daylight. They're busy with forums and debates and very important things like sneering at each other's sandals. Your clients are the in-betweeners, laborers, freedmen, soldiers, shopkeepers, men with coins in their pockets and somewhere else to be by noon. A lot of them don't even make eye contact. It's funny how much shame you can see in the glance of a man who just asked for something completely undignified, then paid in rusted bronze. You step outside for air. Just briefly. The sun's fully up now, and the street's a hot, noisy ribbon of movement. You lean against the wall, watching vendors bark at passers-by. Someone throws a dead fish into a cart. It thuds. You think about breakfast. You think about going to the communal latrine and just sitting there for 10 minutes to breathe. You think about taking off your sandals and not moving for the rest of the day, but instead, you check the tally chalked on the doorframe. It's not great. The madam glances over, her expression sharp. You roll your eyes when she looks away, then instantly regret it, because she always sees everything. Historians still argue whether these brothels were government-run, privately owned, or some blurry mess of both. What's certain is they were common. Rome had hundreds, maybe thousands, depending on how you define brothel. Some were grand, even multi-storied, with painted walls and private rooms. Others, like yours, were closer to glorified closets with pretensions. There's a quirky law you once heard about, one of those absurd Roman oddities. Apparently, some emperors tried to ban senators from sleeping with prostitutes. Which sounds noble until you realize the senators were usually the ones writing the laws. Spoiler, enforcement was relaxed. You shuffle back in and check your hair in the mirror, shard tertia nailed to the wall. Not bad. One curl still clings to your forehead in defiance of sweat and gravity. You lick your finger and smooth it back. Clients like neatness. Or at least the illusion of it. There's a moment, just a moment, where everything is still. No footsteps, no voices, no orders. You breathe in. You breathe out. The room smells like old wood and a faint trace of lavender oil, long since diluted past recognition. Still, it comforts you, and then, footsteps. Another client. You square your shoulders and smile. Your life is broken into these segments. Client. Clean. Eat. Wait. Repeat. Sometimes you think about what you'd be doing if you'd been born into a different family. Maybe you'd be a vendor, selling sausages at the market. Maybe a midwife. Maybe just married, like your sister, who has 3 children and no time to write back, but then again, she doesn't get paid to lie down and pretend to care. You do. So who's winning? You overhear a conversation in the hallway, 2 clients complaining about prices. You resist the urge to lean out and offer to raise them just to watch them sputter. Instead, you sit on your bed, legs folded, waiting. Sometimes, you draw in the dirt with a stick. Little flowers. Shapes. Names, once, but you stopped doing that. Names made you feel too real. And this isn't a place for real. A girl in the room beside yours is crying. It's muffled. She's new. The madam will say she's too soft. You want to tell her to chew licorice root before her next shift. It keeps the breath fresh. Makes the whole ordeal feel like you're somewhere else, somewhere shaded and safe. You don't, though. She'll learn it or she won't. The baker comes back. He's forgotten your name again. He always brings an extra coin the second time around, though, and once he gave you a still warm roll with honey in the middle. You almost cried. Not from kindness, from the shock of sweetness. He leaves, and you're alone again. You light the lamp. Still early, but the hall's darker now. Clouds overhead. The flame flickers. The room looks different. Less cramped, more dreamlike. You lie back and let the quiet settle. Someone down the street plays a reed flute, and the notes drift in through the open door like lazy birds. You let your eyes close for just a second. And in that second, you're not here. You're lying in a meadow outside the city, watching leaves tremble in the breeze. No clients. No coins. Just peace, and then, footsteps, back to work. The footsteps are heavy this time, deliberate, echoing with confidence. You know the sound. This one isn't a baker or a fishmonger. He's not looking around nervously or checking his coin pouch twice. He's used to being here. Or at least used to places like this. When he pulls back the curtain, you recognize him instantly. He's a decumanus, a junior officer, probably from one of the border garrisons. The kind of man who gets posted somewhere hot, dusty, and full of arguments over barley rations. He's got the walk of someone who expects obedience and the breath of someone who's had too much mulsum, that sweet, spiced wine that tastes better than it smells the next morning. You smile automatically. Not too much. Not too little. He tosses a few coins on the small stone ledge beside your mattress and says something like, "Let's not waste time." You've heard that line before. You hear it more than your own name, and so begins another session in the day's slow parade of clients. You learn a lot about men when you see them like this, when they're stripped of their armor, or their pride, or their sense of mystery. Some talk. Some don't. Some pretend you're someone else. Some want you to pretend they're someone else. You've heard husbands mutter about their wives, students quote Virgil mid-thrust, and, once, a man recited tax law with increasing urgency. That one was memorable. Today's officer doesn't say much, and you're fine with that. He's quick. A little gruff. He leaves a few more coins than expected. You'll take it. As he exits, he tosses a lazy salute. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. You've been paid by half the Roman army, and not one of them has ever remembered your name the second time. You settle again on your straw mat. The smell of his sandal oil still lingers. Spiced leather and vinegar. You reach for the cloth to wipe down the bed. You wonder, not for the first time, who exactly comes through your door, and why. Not just their names, which rarely stick. But their reasons. Their hungers. Some men show up out of loneliness. You can tell, they want to talk more than touch. They ask questions about your life, your favorite color, if you've ever seen the sea. That last one gets you every time. No, you haven't. You've only smelled it, once, in the breeze from a trader's cart. Salty, metallic, impossible, others come for the thrill. Young men with shaking hands, laughing too loudly as they hand over their coins, trying to act older than they are. You could teach a course on false bravado. You really could, and then there are the ones you dread. The entitled ones. The ones who act like your time belongs to them before the curtain even moves. Who complain about the price, the lighting, the heat, the world in general, and take it all out on your shoulders. You've learned to spot them by their shoes. It's always in the shoes. Historians still argue whether prostitution in Rome was viewed as a necessary evil or a completely accepted profession. The truth likely depends on whom you ask. Elite moralists love to clutch their pearls in public and then slip into brothels in private. The same senator who ranted in the forum about decadent living probably passed you a coin just last week. What's clear is that Roman society was obsessed with control, and sex work was a key pressure valve. By keeping it legal, taxed, and carefully marked, hello, red thread tunic, the city could allow men their indulgences while pretending to stay morally upright. A tidy little hypocrisy wrapped in a very inconvenient toga. You stretch your legs. A dull ache climbs from your calves to your lower back. You've worked a full morning already, and it's barely past midday. You tell yourself you'll rest for 10 minutes. That turns into 2. You hear voices outside, another group approaching. And just like that, you're back up. This time, it's 2 men, friends, probably from the same shop or barracks. They're laughing, nudging each other, making jokes that aren't nearly as clever as they think. You suppress the urge to groan. You don't like doing double sessions, but the madam insists. More coin, she says. And don't forget to smile. You smile. A crooked little smirk that says, I know exactly what kind of day this is going to be. You split the time, dividing your attention the way a butcher carves meat, quick, efficient, emotionless. The room gets hot, thick with breath and body. You try to think about something else. The fountain you passed this morning. The way the sun sparkled on the water. The cat that followed you 3 blocks, it ends, eventually. It always does. The men leave, still laughing. One of them looks sheepish. He presses a little extra into your hand and mouths thank you like he's whispering to a ghost. You nod, unsure what to make of that. You pocket the coin. Every denarius matters. You sit again on the bed. Your feet are throbbing. Your fingers ache. You stare at the curtain, hoping it won't move for a while. It doesn't. Not yet. You glance across the room to where someone carved a name into the wall. Livia, it reads. You don't know who Livia was, but she must have been bored, or desperate, or both. You imagine her sitting where you are, tracing letters into the stone with a broken hairpin. Wondering if anyone would ever read them. You have a name, too. You just don't use it here. A quirky tidbit, Roman graffiti from Pompeii's brothel survives to this day, little inscriptions scratched into the plaster by clients, workers, even madams. Some are crude. Some are hilarious. One reads, here, Secundus had the best experience of his life. You always wonder what made it so special. Clean sheets? Probably not. You pull the curtain slightly and peek outside. The street is bustling. A woman walks by balancing a jar on her head. A boy chases a runaway chicken. Somewhere nearby, a lyre player is tuning up. You have another customer waiting. You can hear him shuffling awkwardly outside your room. He coughs. You sigh, then call him in. You get through it. Like always, and after he leaves, you finally allow yourself a longer break. The madam is distracted. The hallway's quiet. You slip out the back and wander to the nearby fountain, trailing your fingers through the water. You sit on the edge, watching droplets splash like tiny diamonds. A child runs past you and splashes your tunic. You don't mind. It's just water. It'll dry, you close your eyes, letting the sounds of Rome surround you. The clatter of hooves, the murmurs of conversation, the laughter, the shouting. It's chaos. It's home. It's everything and nothing all at once. For a moment, you forget the red thread, the coins, the ache in your spine. You're just a woman in the sun, feeling almost human, but then, inevitably, someone calls your name. Not your real name, of course. The one the madam assigned you when you arrived. You rise, brush the dust from your tunic, and head back. Another session awaits. You slide back behind the curtain. The room is dim again, the oil lamp guttering softly like it's trying to nap. You know the feeling, the next man steps in without knocking, always a sign. He doesn't meet your eyes, just grunts something about usual service and tosses his cloak to the floor. You recognize him. Not his name, those rarely stick, but the crooked scar over his lip and the way he holds his elbows like he's fending off ghosts. He's not cruel. Just tired. Maybe as tired as you. As he lies back on the straw mat, your thoughts drift. They often do. You've grown expert at disassociating during work, slipping out of your mind like someone loosening the laces of a tight sandal. You keep your voice soft. You match his rhythm. You glance at the plaster wall behind his shoulder and think, when was the last time this place was painted? He grunts again, some half apology, half goodbye, and leaves you with a few coins and that same heavy silence that follows most visits. The air smells of old sweat and olive oil. You wipe your hands with the edge of your tunic, smooth the straw, and lean back. Not to rest, just to pause, because here's the thing, between clients, there's this strange in-between state. Not quite rest. Not quite alert. Just waiting. The lupanar isn't exactly luxurious. It's cramped, built like a storage closet with a bed. You've seen better stables. The walls are painted with those faded erotic frescoes, naked limbs, awkward poses, skin that was once red and now just smudged. They're decorative, sure, but they're also a menu. A visual guide for what's on offer. Each room is nearly identical. Narrow entry. Low ceiling. Straw mat. Tiny shelf with maybe a comb or a mirror shard. Some of the girls hang small charms from theirs, phallic amulets for luck, or tiny statuettes of Venus. You used to keep a carved seashell, but it was taken. Or maybe borrowed permanently. Nothing stays for long here, not even small comforts. Out in the hallway, someone's arguing over change. Again. It's always the same type, a man who insists he handed over more than he did, as if your memory vanishes with your modesty. The madam handles it with that sharp voice of hers, half threat, half theater. You smirk faintly. She could run the Senate, if they let women in. Your next client doesn't come for another 15 minutes. You hear the lull in the air, that slow tapering of sound like the city taking a breath. This is your rare, precious window of downtime. And you use it exactly how you always do. You watch, you lean at the doorway and peer across the brothel's courtyard. Not all lupanars are like this. Some are deep in apartment blocks. Or under taverns, or hidden in alleyways. But this one has a central square open to the sky. It lets in light, and sometimes pigeons. Right now, there's a woman crossing the yard with a bucket balanced on her hip. You know her. Not by name. By rhythm. Everyone here has a rhythm. Tertia walks like she's performing on stage, all deliberate sways and eye rolls. Junie moves like she's dodging invisible blows, flinching before voices even rise. You've been told you walk too straight. That it's unconvincing. Like you still think you're free, but the truth is, most of you are technically free. The laws make a distinction. Some sex workers are slaves, owned outright by their madams or masters. Others, like you, are independent. Registered, taxed and responsible for your own debts. In practice, that freedom means you can leave, but not really. Where would you go? What would you eat? Rome is a city of promises. And also of broken ones. You lean against the doorframe and let your mind wander through the city's layers. Rome is like a honey cake left too long in the sun, golden on top, but sticky, sagging, and full of ants underneath. Senators in white togas stride down marble colonnades while beggars sleep on their steps. Gold bracelets clink next to empty bowls. Silk and sewage share the same street, and here you are, tucked into the crevices, part of the daily traffic, though no one writes about you. Not in poems. Not in letters. Not unless it's to laugh or condemn. Historians still argue whether Roman brothels had rules, real ones, like safety measures or work hours, or if it was all at the whim of the madam. Some inscriptions hint at price charts. Some even offer loyalty discounts. You've seen none of that. Just the madam's scribbled tallies, scratched into a wax tablet at the end of the day. What you do know is this: the rhythm of a lupanar is relentless. There are no official breaks. You sneak food between clients. You rest only when no one's waiting. You drink watered wine to stay loose, but not so much that you lose focus. You tell jokes under your breath. You giggle at ridiculous requests. You fake it. You endure. You stare at the oil lamp for a long time. Its flame sways like a dancer, flickering against the wall. You think about what your day actually is. Client. Wipe down. Eat. Wait. Client. Repeat. Noon hits like a hammer. The heat seeps in through the courtyard, heavy and sticky. The smell of the alley sharpens: boiled cabbage, urine, and hot bread. A brutal combination. You dab rose water behind your ears. It doesn't help much, but you try. There's a scratch at your door. Not a knock, a scratch. That's how polite the regulars get. This one's a merchant. Smells like wool and wine. His hands are soft, but his words are sharp. He talks the entire time, about ships, about taxes, about his wife's cooking. You nod in the right places. He thanks you after. That's rare. Still doesn't tip. You sit up slowly after he leaves. Your thighs ache. Your spine pops. You reach under the straw mat for the linen pouch where you keep your coins. You count them, as always. It's both comfort and habit. 12 asses. 1 sestertius. Not great. Not awful. You hear a voice from another room, low and lilting. Tertia, teasing a client. You smile faintly. She's good at this. Born for it, maybe. Or maybe she just gave up resisting a long time ago. You grab a bite of flatbread and chew slowly, savoring it. It's dry, but your teeth are used to worse. You've eaten things that cracked your molars. A pebble in lentils once cost you a week of pain. Still chewing, you catch your reflection in the mirror shard. You don't look like a temptress. You look like a tired woman in her 20s with circles under her eyes and a fading bruise on your collarbone. The fantasy is for them, not for you. Quirky fact of the day. Roman prostitutes sometimes advertise their services on walls. Not just symbols, names, specialties, directions. Little handwritten promotions. You saw one once scratched into plaster near the docks, Felicia, with the clever tongue. 3rd room past the bronze gate. You admired the hustle. You reach for your comb. 2 missing teeth, but it still works. You run it through your hair and listen to the street outside. The sound of hooves. Children. Someone arguing in Greek. You sit, quiet for a moment. Just breathing. Just being. You allow yourself a dream, just a quick one. Maybe one day, you'll save enough to buy out of this place. Maybe open a stall. Sell trinkets. Bread. Anything. You'll wear whatever you want. You'll walk without the red thread. No more smiling on command, but then the curtain rustles. Another client. Another breath held, you smooth your tunic. You stand up. You smile, back to the play. The next man who steps through your curtain isn't new. He's not a regular either, but he's been here before. Once, maybe twice. He greets you with the kind of grin that suggests he thinks you'll be glad to see him again. You match it with your usual practiced warmth. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to keep things easy. You know the look in his eyes, he's not just here to buy time. He wants something else. Attention. Connection. A sense that he matters more than the others, and here it comes, he lingers. Doesn't go straight for the mat. He chats, he asks if you remember him. You lie and say yes, you've had men like this before. They want a tiny fantasy, not just that you enjoy their company, but that you might prefer it. They want the illusion that this isn't a transaction, that something more might be hidden under the surface. Maybe affection. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the kind of thing that's supposed to cost nothing and means everything. You've learned to spot them by how they touch you. Not greedy. Not rushed. Tentative, like they're testing the waters of a lake they've convinced themselves is deeper than it is. This one leans in close. He smells like almonds and leather. Not unpleasant. His fingers brush your wrist with the kind of softness that doesn't usually happen in this place. Afterward, he talks. About his work. His mother. His recent loss in a dice game. You nod. He asks if he can see you again, just for talking. You say maybe. He tips well, and when he leaves, he looks back once. He's trying not to look too eager. You've seen it before. The quiet hope. The ones who think you might be more than what the curtain implies. He's one of the patrons who might eventually try to keep you. It happens more often than you'd expect. A client who's charmed. Or lonely. Or flattered by his own fantasy. He returns again and again, offers more coin, insists on exclusivity. Some call it protection. Some call it ownership. The lines blur quickly. These are what people call patronage arrangements. Informal, unofficial, but deeply woven into the fabric of Roman life. It wasn't uncommon for men, especially older ones, or ones with disposable income, to select a favorite prostitute and pay her regularly. Maybe she gets a nicer room. Nicer clothes. More time off. But always with strings. Sometimes it goes well. Sometimes the woman ends up with property, or a house, or even manumission if she's enslaved. Other times, not so much. The money dries up. The attention turns possessive. Or dangerous. There's a story the girls pass around like a cautionary torch. A meretrix named Lelia once accepted a patron's offer. He paid for her to live in a rented apartment, dressed her in linen instead of wool, even bought her a servant. She lasted 6 months before he accused her of forgetting her place and left her with nothing but a cracked comb and a scar across her cheek. No one tells these stories outside the lupanar, of course. Those who remember you at all remember the fantasy version. The pretty names. The smiles. Not the fine print. Historians still argue whether patronage was empowerment or exploitation. Whether some women truly had agency in these relationships or whether the power imbalance was simply repackaged with better furniture. There's no clear answer, just a pile of fragmented inscriptions, poems, and second-hand accounts tangled in centuries of assumptions, but in the real day-to-day, you don't think about that. You think about coin. About which clients are safe, which ones tip, which ones talk too much but might be useful. You've had a few soft-eyed men hover longer than they should. One even brought you a necklace. You pawned it the same night, enough for bread and figs and 2 extra lamps for the hallway. You can't afford to collect trinkets. You collect exits. During slower hours, the topic comes up among the girls. Who's seeing who? Who's angling for a regular? Who might get out, by marriage, by patronage, by sheer luck? Tertia used to see a spice seller. Good money, sweet breath, lots of promises. Then he left for Alexandria and never came back. No letter. Just silence. She keeps the perfume bottle he gave her. Never uses it. Just unscrews the lid sometimes and stares out the window like someone waiting for a ship that sank months ago. You never ask her what she's thinking. You already know. You've flirted with the idea of a patron before. It's tempting. Fewer clients. More comfort. Some stability. But also, one man. One gatekeeper. One possible jailer with gold-threaded chains. You've seen it enough to know that better can be relative, and what if he tires of you? Or gets jealous? Or moves on? The city's full of ghosts, girls who once thought they were being rescued. There's a strange kind of safety in the repetition. In the parade of forgettable faces and forgettable names. The curtain closes. The curtain opens. You know the script. You control the pace. With a patron, the script changes. The rules blur. You sit now on your mat, twirling a loose thread from your tunic. The madam walks by, glances at you, says nothing. She's waiting to see if the soft-eyed man comes back. If he does, she'll raise your price behind your back. She always does when someone gets attached, because even affection has margins. You look up. The new girl's walking past your door, clutching a small pouch. She's limping. First week. You'll give her a tip later about salt baths and crushed fig leaves for swelling. She reminds you of yourself. Too polite. Still saying thank you to the ones who don't deserve it. You lean your head back against the wall. The plaster's cool. You close your eyes, just for a breath. You remember a client, one from months ago, who told you he dreamed of building a villa outside Rome. Olive trees. Chickens. A long road with poppies on either side. He asked you what you dreamed of. You didn't know what to say. Still don't. There's a sharp whistle from the front. Someone's drunk. You hear the madam snapping at him. Then the shuffle of sandals, someone being turned away or pushed out. You hope it's the latter. Your room is quiet again. You press a coin into the crack in the wall where you hide your earnings. Your secret hoard. Not much yet. But maybe enough. One day, to do something else, not to escape, necessarily. Just to choose, that's the real fantasy, isn't it? Not love. Not silk sheets. Just the option to walk away. To say no. To say, I'd rather not. Quirky detail for the hour. Some women in your position would adopt new names, stage names, you might call them. Flashier, more exotic, more enticing. You've toyed with the idea. Something Greek, maybe. Or Egyptian. Something that sounds like it belongs to someone with options, but in the end, you've stuck with the name they gave you. It's simple. Easy to pronounce. Easy to forget, exactly how you prefer it. You're rinsing your hands in a shallow bronze bowl, fingers aching from being clenched too long. The water's cloudy, someone used it before you, but it's still cool, and for now, that's enough. There's a lull in the hallway. No footsteps, no drunken laughter, no shouts from the atrium. Just the steady, muffled creak of wood overhead and the occasional hiss of oil lamps. For a moment, it's almost quiet, until Flavia slides in through the curtain without knocking. She does that. Always has. She used to knock, once, when she was new, but not anymore. Have you seen him? She asks. You don't need to ask who. You've seen the way her eyes follow a certain client, older, red tunic. Thick beard, gentle voice. He's not remarkable, but he brings fresh bread and sometimes olives, and once he left her a little bunch of dried lavender tied with string. He's not been in, you say, wiping your hands on your tunic. She nods like she expected it, then leans against the wall and exhales sharply, the way women do when they've just peeled off a day that didn't go their way. You let her sit for a while. That's what this place becomes, in the slower stretches, quiet minutes between appointments, women peeling off the masks they wear for coin, and in those masks, there's a whole spectrum of lives, because no two women in this place came here for the same reason. Some were born into it. Some sold into it. Some stepped into it deliberately, one worn-out choice at a time. Some are enslaved, with no coin of their own. Others are technically free but still live by the leash of debt or circumstance. Some are sharp, calculating, already angling for retirement. Others are drifting, young, still thinking they'll leave soon. You're somewhere in the middle. Flavia is quiet now. She's got that faraway look. You recognize it instantly, the one women wear when they start fantasizing about after. As if this chapter has a natural conclusion. There's a joke you once heard, maybe from Daria, maybe from someone before her, you know you're finished when you stop being asked for your name. It lands in your gut now and again. Historians still argue over how many women actually managed to leave the trade. Roman law didn't make it impossible, but it didn't exactly roll out the welcome carpet either. In theory, a prostitute could change careers, marry, even become respectable, but only if she hadn't registered under a certain legal designation. The infamous infamia, a stain on one's social record, branding you as morally suspect. You could be a gladiator, an actor, a prostitute, or a tavern keeper, and all of you wore that label like a tattoo no one could see but everyone sensed. Once marked with infamia, your chances of climbing back into polite society? Slim, and yet, you hear stories. Of girls who married clients and opened inns. Of women who partnered with brothel keepers and became madams themselves. Of one who even ran a bakery with her sister, somewhere near the Circus Maximus. Are they true? Hard to say. Rome is a city built on gossip and smoke. The good stories get told louder than the sad ones. There's a thump from the hallway. Someone stumbles. You hear laughter. The lull is over. Flavia sighs and straightens her tunic. I've got one next, she mutters. You nod. Watch for the belt buckle guy. She groans. Gods, I hate the belt buckle guy. So do you. It digs into your hip when he forgets to take it off, which is always. He smells like fish brine and brags about his uncle's pottery shop like it's a senator's estate. He once tried to pay you with a string of garlic. You glance out into the hall. Two men are being ushered in. You recognize neither, which is good. And also not good. New clients mean surprises. You watch them disappear into separate rooms, then slip outside to the alley for a moment of real air. The street is quieter now. Most Romans are inside by this hour, or stumbling their way toward a last amphora. The breeze carries the usual city bouquet, dust, dung, sour wine, and roasted meat from some food stall still burning down its coals. You lean against the rough wall. In the distance, someone's singing badly. Probably drunk. Probably thinks he's poetic. It reminds you of another life. Maybe the one you might have had, maybe one you just made up. Quirky fact, some Roman prostitutes hired criers to stand in the street and advertise their services, like human signboards. Come see Celia. Finest thighs in the Subura. They'd shout it again and again, sometimes with rhymes. Some even had street graffiti, scrawled by admirers or by the girls themselves, declaring things like, Felicia gives good company for 1 denarius, you don't have a crier. But there is something scratched onto the wall near the bathhouse that you suspect is about you. You haven't asked, You turn back inside just in time to catch a glimpse of the madam counting coins from a wide-faced man with ruddy cheeks. He grins at you, and she jerks her thumb toward the third room on the left, your next customer. He's chatty. Too chatty. But not unkind. He smells faintly of sheep, which you take to mean he came from the outskirts. Maybe a shepherd. Maybe just a lazy washer. He asks if you're busy tonight. It's a meaningless question, but you give him a soft smile anyway. You'd be surprised, you say, as you always do, there's a rhythm to even the worst clients. Some of them just need to be heard. Others just want to make noise. You listen. You nod. You wait for the part where they pretend this means more than it does. Later, as you straighten your hair and adjust your belt, you notice a new rip in the curtain. Just a small one, near the bottom. You make a mental note to sew it up. You never get around to it. Another client waits. You go again, when the night finally tapers off, when the last sandal has scuffed its way out the door and the lamp oil burns low, you collapse onto your mat and stare at the ceiling. There's a crack there shaped like a fish. You've stared at it so long it feels like a pet. A breeze catches the curtain and stirs the stale air. Somewhere down the hall, a girl coughs. Another giggles in her sleep. You close your eyes and imagine a different ceiling. One painted blue. Or maybe thatched, with wind sliding between the reeds. A ceiling above a bed you chose, no clients. No belt buckles. Just you and a door that stays closed because you said so. It's not even midday yet, and already your feet are sore. You haven't been out long, maybe an hour, but the cobblestones of the Subura, slick with yesterday's waste and this morning's rinse water, make every errand feel like a pilgrimage. Your sandals are thin and splitting near the straps. You eye a stall selling newer pairs, but they cost more than a week's worth of bread, and your feet aren't bleeding, yet, so you keep walking. The brothel's errands fall to whoever drew the short reed that morning. Today, it's you. With a basket crooked over one arm, you dodge a slurry of boys chasing a dog, skirt around a line of laundry dangling between two second-story windows, and step over what you're 85% sure is horse dung. This, apparently, is how Rome gets things done. The Subura buzzes at this hour. Vendors holler over one another, voices rasping above carts of bruised figs and warm loaves. A man with a cracked lyre hums tunelessly beside a tavern. A pair of women bargain fiercely over a bolt of fabric, arguing in clipped Latin that sizzles like oil on bronze. You're here to pick up oil. Olive, cheap, probably already mixed with whatever the merchant can get away with. It's not for cooking, of course. It's for the lamps, and for the bodies. A little oil in the right places keeps everything smooth, presentable, and better smelling than it would otherwise. A lot of history books don't mention it. But yes, Roman prostitutes ran errands like this all the time. Unless they were enslaved and tightly confined, or worked in the elite upper tier, they usually left the premises daily. They had lives, in their own strange rhythm. They bought food. They gossiped. They argued with vendors. They flirted. They learned the price of good wine, and how to spot spoiled dates, and which bathhouses allowed women before the noon hour. You reach the oil seller's booth and give your name. He recognizes you, sort of. Probably can't remember where from, but his eyes linger a bit longer than necessary. That happens a lot. People don't always know your face, but they sense you. Something about your walk, your posture, the way your mouth hesitates before smiling. You pay the few copper coins the madam gave you, and he hands over the small amphora wrapped in straw. It's heavier than you expected, and it digs into your side as you tuck it in the basket. Tell your sister I said hello. The vendor smirks. You don't bother correcting him. It's easier to let people imagine you're someone else. You take the long way back. Not for any grand reason, just to stretch the moment. The brothel is close and hot, always, and these narrow streets at least offer noise, distraction, and sunlight, even if it comes filtered through smoke. As you walk, you pass a shrine to Mercury, patron of merchants, thieves, travelers, and, yes, prostitutes. You make the same motion you always do, a two-finger tap to the lips, then the breast, then the small offering shelf. You leave nothing this time, no coin, no sweet, but you mouth a wordless thanks anyway. Mercury is busy these days. Quirky fact, Roman prostitutes weren't just tolerated under Mercury's protection, they sometimes participated in public rituals and holidays tied to him. On the Vinalia Rustica, a festival about wine and fertility, sex workers might parade or perform offerings, slipping into public religious life in strange, flickering ways. The line between sacred and profane in Roman society wasn't always where you'd expect it. As you turn the corner back onto your street, a little boy, barely old enough to walk, races past, laughing, chased by a girl twice his size. She trips. He falls. They both giggle, dust rising around them like tiny smoke, and then you spot a familiar figure leaning against the doorpost of the brothel. It's Aurelius. You know the name isn't real, none of them ever use real names, but he's consistent. At least. He comes by once a week. Always pays on time. Never rough. Tells terrible jokes. Brings figs. He sees you coming and lifts a hand in greeting. You missed the peach cart, you say by way of hello. He grins. Then I'll have to settle for you. You roll your eyes. You're terrible. He shrugs. Terrible works. He follows you inside. You pass the amphora to one of the girls lounging in the front room, Flavia, with her nimble fingers and sharp mouth, and then lead Aurelius to one of the back rooms. It's cooler here. Quiet. Dust motes turn lazily in a shaft of light. You both know the script. He sits. You pour a little wine. He tells you about the horse race he lost money on. Historians still argue whether prostitutes in Rome ever truly enjoyed the company of regulars, he says, in a mock academic voice. You laugh, surprised. Did you just quote a debate at me? I've been reading, he says with a wink. Terrible habit. You lean back on your elbows, smiling. Careful. You'll develop empathy. He goes quiet for a moment. Long enough that you wonder if you said something too sharp. But then he reaches for your hand, not lecherous, just light, and presses something into your palm. It's a ring. Bronze, simple. A square green stone set into a thick band, pawned from my uncle's collection, he says softly. He won't miss it. You look at it, then at him. You know I can't wear this, you whisper. Not here. I know, he replies. Just keep it. For after. The word sticks in the air like incense smoke. After, there's always an after. Always an imagined future, shiny with possibility and utterly out of reach, but still. You hide the ring in your sandal for now. Later, after he's gone and you've washed your hands and rebraided your hair, you think about what he said. You think about how some women did, in fact, forge deeper bonds with clients. There are old inscriptions, graffiti, love poems, tokens found in graves, suggesting that some Roman prostitutes developed actual relationships. Some even lived with favored patrons long-term. Others were freed by them, sometimes even married. It was rare. It was complicated. It was legally tangled. But it happened. You pause in the hall, staring at the light creeping under the doorway. Is it hope? Or is it just fatigue, trying on optimism like an old shawl? You decide not to name it. That night, over shared olives and lentil mash, the girls talk about escape plans. Someone heard about a ship leaving for Alexandria. Another says the laundresses near the Tiber are looking for help. Flavia jokes about opening a bathhouse and hiring only women who hate men. You all laugh. But not too hard, because somewhere beneath the jokes is a seed of longing, curling deeper every day. You excuse yourself early and retreat to the tiny courtyard, lying on the cracked stone under a square of sky. You touch your sandal, feel the ring still hidden in the lining, the stars are faint, flickering behind city smoke. One shoots across the edge of your vision and disappears. You whisper something to Mercury. You don't even know what it is, just a whisper. Just in case. You wake to the sound of arguments in the alley. Again, a fishmonger is accusing a baker's boy of stealing a sardine. The boy's voice cracks with the insistence of innocence. The fishmonger shouts louder, clearly aware that volume outranks logic in these situations. Somewhere behind them, a goat bleats its opinion. You sigh. The sky is a dull, rusted blue overhead, and your back aches from sleeping on stone again. You really need to stop doing that. But sometimes, when the rooms inside feel too close, too warm with stale perfume and sour breath, the courtyard is the only place you can exhale. You slip back inside before anyone else is up. The others are tangled in sleep or scrubbing last night's makeup from their faces. You nod at one of the girls, Sabina, who's humming tunelessly while plucking at a torn hem. She doesn't speak, just gives you a sleepy side glance and goes back to her sewing. You wash quickly, splashing cold water from a cracked basin onto your face and neck. You reach for the scented oil again, still that cloudy stuff from yesterday. It smells of crushed thyme and something faintly rancid. Still, it's better than sweat. You dress, if you can call it that. A linen tunic with a dyed sash, red, of course. The color is part of the role. Ancient Roman prostitutes were legally forbidden from wearing the white stola of matrons. The stola was a visual declaration of modesty, virtue, and wifely dignity. You're not allowed any of those things, even in fabric form. Instead, you wear the tunic, shorter than a matron's would be, and the palace shawl draped off the shoulder just a little. Enough to invite. Not enough to seem desperate. You've learned that distinction. It's a market day, and you're headed to the baths. Not to wash, gods know, those places reek of gossip and underpaid labor, but to linger. Watch. Be seen. Because here's the thing about your life that no one writes down on official scrolls: half your job is performance. The marketplace, the baths, the theater steps, these are your stages. So today, you perform. You head toward the Balnea, one of the smaller public bathhouses that opens to women in the early morning. The air is warmer now, and the streets already bustle with carts and chatter. A fruit vendor shouts about his pomegranates. A blind beggar shakes a cup rhythmically with surprising rhythm. Two men in senatorial stripes argue about property lines, and you, slipping through it all like smoke. The Balnea is a squat brick building near the foot of a hill. You know the guards here, and they wave you through with bored expressions. One of them, a retired soldier with one ear, winks. The entry room is steamy and chaotic. Women scrub limbs in bowls. Children run underfoot. Steam curls around naked shoulders. You recognize one or two other meretresses here, one with her hair twisted into a tall braid, another with a scar across her cheek and the flattest expression you've ever seen. You catch each other's eyes. No words exchanged, just the slight nod of shared experience. You settle onto a bench near the heated pool, not too close to get splashed, but close enough to let the mist dew your skin. You cross your legs. You tilt your head. You let the steam soften your features. You wait. Men aren't allowed at this hour, not officially. But that doesn't mean no one is watching. There are always messengers. Attendants, curious boys peeking from cracks in the brickwork. And the women talk. Word travels. A senator's wife, drying her arms beside you, asks casually, "Didn't I see you on the Aventine last week?" You smile. Possibly. She chuckles. You girls are everywhere. You offer a polite shrug. The city has many needs. She doesn't press. But you catch her looking again a few moments later, her gaze more curious than judgmental. That's the game. You exist in the corner of everyone's vision, never invited, rarely ignored. Fun historical tidbit: Roman bathhouses weren't just about bathing. They were social hubs, gathering spots, and yes, sometimes informal business venues. Deals were struck there. Affairs arranged. Gossip fermented like fish sauce. Prostitutes were often present, though usually on the fringe. It was a performance of propriety, one where everyone knew the lines but pretended not to. Eventually, the heat gets to you. You step outside, blinking in the sunlight. Your skin glows from the mist. Your lips are chapped. You feel strangely powerful, until you spot her. She's standing near the steps, a girl younger than you, maybe 15, maybe less. She's barefoot, her tunic patched poorly. And she has that wide, open look of someone new to the city. You recognize the posture. The hesitation in her hands. The way she stands slightly apart, as if unsure whether she's supposed to be here. She's fresh. Probably just arrived from the countryside, or sold into the city's shadows by a debt-ridden uncle. Her eyes catch yours. There's hope in them, and fear, and the question you've seen 100 times: is this all there is? You look away. Historians still argue whether young women entering prostitution in Rome did so by force, by desperation, or by something more complicated, a blend of pressures and social dead ends. The truth is rarely tidy. Some were sold. Some chose. Some were tricked, or born into it. Some, impossibly, found power in it. You don't try to talk to her. Not today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe never. You can't save everyone. You drift through the rest of the day like mist through columns. A stop at the apothecary for more perfume. A pause outside a bakery just to smell the sugared almonds. A whispered deal with a local spice seller for a packet of cinnamon, tiny, precious, and stashed deep in your tunic. It'll make the wine more drinkable tonight. Back home, the others are back on the floor, lounging like bored cats in silk. Livia's rubbing her feet. Sabina is arguing with the cook over whether yesterday's stew is still safe. Someone's singing softly in the background. You join the edge of the conversation. You laugh at the right times. You pass the cinnamon around like treasure. Later, in your room, you unlace your sandals and find the ring again. You turn it over in your palm. The green stone catches what little light leaks through the shutters. It's a strange thing, how something so small can feel like a weight. Not heavy, exactly. Just significant. You hide it again. Not in the sandal this time, but under the bricks near your bed. Just in case, because maybe Aurelius means it. Maybe he doesn't, maybe it doesn't matter. What matters is tomorrow. And the next day. And keeping your skin oiled, your hair combed, your eyes clear, your jokes sharp, and maybe, just maybe, talking to that girl at the bathhouse, eventually. You wake up slower today. The window shutter is cracked just enough to let in the buttery light of a Roman morning. Somewhere nearby, someone is pounding linen against stone, and the rhythm is oddly soothing. You blink twice, stretch, and feel the stiffness along your spine like a line drawn in charcoal. You must have slept strangely. Again, but you've earned it. Last night was a long one, long enough that the wax from a melted lamp still dots your floor in hardened splatters. A senator's assistant with too much coin and too little stamina had insisted on poetry readings between performances. The man wept through the third round of Catullus, barely making it to the wine. You chuckle softly. Sometimes it feels like your job isn't sex, it's tolerating men while they perform their feelings at you. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and pad into the kitchen, where Sabina is already nibbling leftover bread, eyes heavy-lidded, hair up in a crooked knot. She mumbles, holding out a piece. You take it. It's dry and smells faintly of garlic, but you eat it anyway. You lean against the doorframe together, watching pigeons squabble in the alley. Then Sabina mutters, "They're clearing out the Sabura again." You pause mid-chew. Today. She nods. Saw the magistrates walking down with their little sticks. And two men in armor looking very official. You sigh. Here we go again. The Sabura district, where you live, is always teetering on the edge of acceptable. It's densely packed, chaotic, and filled with those who don't quite fit elsewhere: tradesmen, laborers, foreigners, entertainers. And you. It's noisy, dirty, and alive. Naturally, the wealthy hate it. Every few months, some senator decides the district needs cleansing, a euphemism for rounding up undesirables, sweeping through streets with pomp, and pushing the poor back into corners where they're less visible. You've survived 4 of these already. Sabina, 6. You gather your things. Nothing flashy. Just a small pouch with coins, a wrapped tunic in case you need to disappear into something less suggestive, and a hairpin sharp enough to count as a weapon. If it comes to that, the city feels watchful today. Guards stand straighter. Eyes linger longer. Shopkeepers nod too quickly. You keep to the side streets, moving through the crowd like a ripple on the Tiber. This is your real skill, navigation. Not of geography, but of mood. You read tension the way others read maps. At the edge of the Sabura, you spot the cart. 2 wheels, 1 cracked. A magistrate stands atop it, droning on about civic duty and maintaining Roman dignity. You suppress a laugh. It's always dignity, isn't it? Never hunger. Never housing. Never the stink of broken pipes or the screams from the tenement fire 2 nights ago. Historians still argue whether these cleanups were sincere attempts at urban reform or thinly veiled acts of class aggression. You're not a historian. You're just tired. You duck into the Temple of Venus for cover. No one will harass you here. The irony would be too rich, even for Roman politics. The temple is quiet, lit by shafts of light through narrow slits. The statue of Venus, carved from imported marble, stares down with that maddening expression, part smile, part sneer. You whisper a prayer. Not because you believe it'll change anything, but because rituals have power. They anchor you, Venus, goddess of love and beauty, and, less publicly, the patron of your entire profession. Romans didn't really separate sacred from profane the way later centuries would. Love, lust, childbirth, seduction, they were all part of the same divine mess. You light a small cone of incense and watch the smoke curl upward like a question mark. The priestess eyes you but says nothing. She knows. Later, you walk past the theater steps where street performers juggle for coins. A boy swallows fire to gasps from the crowd. A girl spins while playing the lyre. You remember when that was you, on these very steps, a decade ago, eyes sharp and voice louder than your doubts. The theater itself looms nearby, Theatrum Pompeii, one of the grandest in the city. It's not showtime yet, but the staff are already prepping. Scaffolds creak, stage curtains billow, and someone yells about a missing amphora of wine. You drift toward the back entrance and exchange a nod with one of the stagehands. He lets you slip inside. The backstage of a Roman theater smells like sweat, sawdust, and ambition. It's a chaotic warren of props, half-finished costumes, painted masks, and broken dreams. You're not here to perform, not officially. But you know the rhythm, and sometimes rhythm is enough. You perch on a crate, watch a rehearsal unfold. A tragedian is butchering a scene from Seneca. He flails his arms with such drama you think he might dislocate something. Wrong mood, you mutter under your breath. Always is, someone says beside you. You glance over, it's Felix. He was an actor once. Now he works the curtains. Lost his voice after a street brawl but still gestures like he's center stage. He offers you a date from his pouch. You take it. Sweet. Sticky. A small kindness, still keeping that senator wrapped around your finger. He signs with a smirk. You raise your eyebrows. More like wrapped around his own delusions. He snorts silently. Later, you step outside, just in time to see a man in fine robes trip on a cobblestone and curse loud enough to wake Mars himself. He's clearly drunk. And definitely important, you recognize him. A client, once. Tried to pay you an amphory of spoiled fish sauce, you pretend not to see him, the sun is slipping lower now, the light going copper and long. You feel it in your bones, this city turning from daytime business to twilight dealings. At the edge of the market, you spot the girl again, from the baths. The young one, she's sitting on a worn step, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes blank. Her tunic is cleaner now, and someone's tied her hair up. But she looks lost. She hasn't chosen her posture yet, the pose of someone who understands how to be looked at. You sit beside her. Not close. Just enough, after a while, you say, this city will eat you alive. She doesn't respond, you nudge a small cloth bundle toward her. Bread. Not much. But enough, still no words. But her fingers curl around it slowly. That's something, you leave her there. Not because you don't care. But because it's too early for her to hear what you'd have to say. Maybe in a week. Maybe a month. Maybe never, but now she knows she's been seen. That's the first step, you return home under an orange sky, the city humming like a giant beast settling in for the night. The Sabura is quieter. The magistrate's cart is gone. Someone's drawn a crude fish on the wall with charcoal, you step inside, Flavia is filing her nails. Sabina is trying on someone else's earrings. The stew smells better than usual, and on your pillow, you find a coin, thick. Heavy. Freshly minted, no note. Just the coin, Aurelius, maybe, you turn it over in your fingers. You roll it across the back of your knuckles like a magician, one night's pay. Or one promise. Or one reminder that nothing in this city is ever truly free. You lie back and let your breath slow, tomorrow is uncertain, but tonight. You sleep with the coin under your pillow, just in case. The scent of smoke and honey wakes you this time, you open one eye to a golden blur, the soft haze of early morning filtering through your curtain, thickened by someone nearby burning old olive branches. It's a smell that sticks to everything, your clothes, your hair, your memory. The kind of smell that makes you wonder, briefly, if it's still night. Or maybe forever morning, Flavia's already up. You can hear her humming as she arranges her makeup pots, tapping her coal stick against the rim of a bronze mirror like she's calling it to attention. She's meeting a client in the gardens of Sallust today, some faded aristocrat who still pretends he knows poetry. You sit up slowly, your back cracking in two precise spots. Your limbs ache, but not unpleasantly. It's the soreness of having earned your sleep. The kind that fades after movement. On the small table near your bed, a folded scrap of parchment waits. No name. No signature. Just a line in rushed Latin, this afternoon. The Red Room. Discretion required, you snort softly. Subtle as always, it's not your usual scene. The Red Room is a hired chamber just off the Forum Boreum, a place half cloaked in silk and scented with crushed roses. Mostly for senators who want to pretend they're in Alexandria. Today's client is likely important, which means he's also likely fragile. You already know the type, he'll speak softly, ask not to be looked at. And try to apologize for things he hasn't done yet. You spend the morning preparing, not with perfumes or new jewelry, but with silence. You make tea. You oil your arms. You brush your hair longer than usual. Not out of vanity, but focus. By midday, the city is already groaning under its own heat. The clay rooftops sweat. The stones burn your feet even through sandals. You wrap your lightest cloak around your shoulders and slip out. You pass the forum where merchants bicker over linen and sheep guts, and a boy tries to sell fake Egyptian amulets to a German tourist who looks hopelessly enchanted. One stall, run by an old Etruscan woman, has a jar labeled for pleasure without regret. You raise an eyebrow. She winks, You make a mental note of that one. As you approach the red room's alleyway, you slow your steps. You always do. This part of the city listens differently, like it knows secrets and expects you to keep them. A slave opens the door wordlessly and gestures you inside. The room lives up to its name. Crimson drapery swallows the walls. A low table with fruit and watered wine waits near a reclining couch. Everything smells of clove, fig, and ambition. The man arrives 5 minutes later, not a senator, after all, but close. A legal aid to someone with power, maybe. His hands are clean. His eyes are tired. His smile is brief. "I won't stay long," he mutters. "I just needed a moment." He doesn't finish the sentence, and you don't ask him to. That's the deal, after all. They pay for the absence of judgment more than anything else. For the right to pause, you pour wine. He declines. You ask nothing. Instead, you sit in silence beside him, barely touching, just breathing together. Eventually, he speaks. "My father was a butcher," he says. "Used to say blood never leaves your hands. Just hides under the nails." You hum in response. Not quite agreement. Not quite pity. "Now I write speeches for men who've never seen a butchered cow in their lives." You nod, "And sometimes I dream in Latin so old, I don't know what I'm saying." He doesn't cry. But he looks like he might have, once, before he learned how not to. When he leaves, he presses 3 denarii into your palm and says thank you like it's a confession. You remain in the red room after he goes. There's no rush. The silence feels earned. You eat 2 figs and pocket a third, then you return to the street. Back in the Sabura, things are louder again. A woman is arguing with a fishmonger about a price that smells worse than the product. A runaway goat is being coaxed from a barrel by a man wearing only one shoe. You pass 2 girls painting each other's eyelids with crushed lapis lazuli, giggling over which client prefers which color. It's a city of noise and texture. You carry it in your body now. As you reach your building, something catches your eye, a message, scratched into the doorframe with the edge of a stylus. Aurelius sends regards. Watch for the wax seal. You trace the letters with your fingertip. The wax seal usually means a job. Or a warning. Or both. Aurelius doesn't waste time on casual correspondence. You'll have to keep your eyes open. Inside, Sabina is sorting through a basket of discarded silk, spoils from a client who thinks gifts are a substitute for coin. "I'm making togas for mice," she says without looking up. You raise an eyebrow. "Very dignified ones," she adds. You flop onto your mat and close your eyes. Behind them, the city still buzzes. Rome doesn't sleep, only blinks. Historians still argue whether the lives of Roman sex workers were predominantly exploitative or self-directed, depending on the period, class, and context. You live that ambiguity. You feel it in your bones when you wake up. When you dress, when you speak with men who think buying time is the same as buying power, but you also know this: you have carved a shape into this city. However narrow, however dangerous, it is yours. That evening, you're invited to a small dinner, not a banquet, not quite social. A private gathering among a few repeat clients and their favorite companions. The setting is a garden patio near the Palatine, with olives hanging heavy above and little torches flickering low. You wear a pale blue stola that drapes just right. Not too rich. Not too plain. Suggestive of stories without giving away the endings. One of the men at the table is new, a scribe with ink-stained hands and nervous energy. You charm him slowly, asking about his scrollwork, feigning interest in bureaucratic tedium until he relaxes. "Have you ever copied a love poem?" You ask. He blushes. "Once. A Greek one. It made no sense." "That means it was probably honest," you reply. Someone laughs too loudly. Another drops a grape and doesn't pick it up. The evening moves like a poem in dactylic hexameter. stately, a little drunk, and too long. Later, one of the women at the table pulls you aside. You don't know her well, Flavia, maybe. She's older. Wiser. Her earrings are real. I hear you've caught Aurelius's attention, she says. You shrug. Maybe. She leans closer. Be careful with men who own more statues than friends. Then she walks away. You file that advice somewhere behind your eyes. Useful. Probably true. But hard to follow when the rent is due. Back home, you find the wax-sealed message waiting, Aurelius. Of course, you don't open it right away. Instead, you light a small lamp. Pour yourself a half cup of wine. Roll your shoulders twice. Then crack the seal. The message is brief. Tomorrow. 9th hour. Garden of Flora. Wear red. Say nothing until spoken to. You sip your wine and lean back. The city hums in the distance. You're not nervous, not exactly, but you feel the change in the wind. Tomorrow will matter, so you wrap yourself in the blanket that still smells faintly of fig and rose, and you drift off not with fear, but with focus. You wake to the sound of someone sweeping the stairs too loudly. It's not even sunrise yet, and already the Subura is vibrating with the clatter of daily life, the clang of amphorae being unloaded, the scratchy call of bread hawkers rehearsing their pitches, and that one dog who always seems to bark just outside your window at precisely the worst possible moment. But today, none of that matters. Today, you have an appointment. You lie there a little longer, wrapped in the knowledge that something important waits at the 9th hour. The red dress Aurelius requested hangs over the foot of your bed, more scarlet than crimson, with a neckline that whispers rather than shouts. You've never worn it in public. It's the sort of dress that asks to be remembered. You rise slowly, stretch, and wash your face in the chipped basin near the window. The water's cold. It wakes you up faster than you'd like. As you dry your cheeks on the corner of your blanket, Flavia pokes her head in. Big day? She asks, smirking. You nod. Ah. One of those, wear red and trust nobody sorts of days. Exactly. You spend the morning doing very little, on purpose. You eat bread soaked in watered honey, braid your hair tight enough to mean business, and rearrange your makeup pots 3 times before finally deciding not to use any at all. Not today. Today you wear only confidence and whatever mystery Aurelius thinks he's purchased. Around the 6th hour, a small boy arrives with a basket of green figs and no explanation. You smile. That's Aurelius's style, suggestive gestures without any actual communication. A habit of the powerful. They let the silence speak, then watch to see who fills it. By the 8th hour, you're ready. You walk slowly through the Palatine Quarter, passing senators and their hangers-on, marble fountains full of too many coins, and slaves scrubbing steps with vinegar. The sun slants golden now, casting long shadows across the temples. You're careful to stay in the light. The Garden of Flora is one of Rome's lesser-known treasures, a patch of green tucked behind an old temple, where flowering shrubs grow with suspicious neatness and benches are always just slightly too warm. You spot Aurelius before he sees you, seated under a fig tree, sipping something from a silver cup, flanked by 2 guards who try very hard not to look like guards. He notices you. He doesn't smile. He simply gestures to the space beside him. You sit. He doesn't speak right away. You don't either. Finally, he says, you know what people call me, don't you? You raise an eyebrow. Besides, Aurelius. He chuckles, but it's not amusement. They call me the Whisper of the Curia. Pretentious, I know. But useful. You nod slowly. It's true. He's a man who moves between circles, senators, generals, foreign emissaries. Not always in front. Sometimes just behind the curtain, holding the rope. There's a problem, he says. A quiet one. Needs someone who knows how to listen more than talk. You wait. There's a foreign diplomat, young, idealistic, too clever by half. He's been exploring Rome. Not the forums. The underlayers. Places like the Red Room. Places like here. You nod again. He's been asking questions about grain contracts, shipping routes, slave auctions. But not like a curious tourist. More like a man collecting leverage. You exhale slowly. You know the type. Outsiders who think Rome is just a system to be studied, when really, it's a beast you feed or flee. He'll be at a villa in Trastevere tonight. Private gathering. You'll attend as someone else. He hands you a small scroll, fake papers, probably forged by some scribe who doesn't ask why the ink changes color in moonlight. Your name is Julia Flavia. You're from Antioch. You're charming, clever, and here to spend your dead husband's money. You smirk. A classic. Find out what he knows. And why he cares. You nod. No promises. Just silent understanding. Historians still argue whether women like you, who operated on the fringe of politics, commerce, and intimacy, held any real influence. Some say you were pawns. Others say you were knives tucked in the folds of society's silk. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. As the sun dips lower, you walk home again, not as yourself, but already as Julia Flavia. You practice your accent. You soften your posture. You become a woman who has never run barefoot through a Subura alley but knows the price of cinnamon in 4 provinces. By the time you reach the villa in Trastevere, the lamps are lit and the guests are already sipping chilled wine like it's melted dignity. You're introduced to the diplomat, a man named Cassianus. Not his real name. You can tell by the way he hesitates before offering it. He's young, yes. But not naive. His eyes are too alert for that. You're from Antioch. He asks, you nod. Born in a storm. Or so my nurse claimed. He chuckles, charmed, good. You spend the evening drifting near him, never clinging, never too distant. Like a planet caught in subtle orbit. You talk about wine, about theater, about the disappointing state of Roman statues, all too muscular, not enough wit. He laughs again, finally, when the others are distracted by a poorly performed Etruscan flute solo. He leans in. I hear you've seen the other Rome. You blink. The one under the gold leaf? He nods. You tilt your head. What do you want with it? His smile falters. To understand how it survives. You pause. That's not the answer you expected, he continues. Empires don't fall from war. They fall from forgetting who they are. You sip your wine, buying time. So you want to remind us? Or warn you, he says quietly, later, when you slip away from the villa, your head spins, not from the drink, but the implications. You don't know if he's a spy, a prophet, or just a very dangerous fool. But Aurelius will want to know. You return to the Subura just past midnight. The streets are mostly empty now, save for a few gamblers nursing their losses and one dog chewing a sandal like it owes him money. Sabina is asleep, curled like a cat near the brazier. You write your report in charcoal on old linen, easier to burn later. You fold it twice, seal it with wax, and hide it beneath a cracked amphora near the bakery. That's the signal. Someone will collect it before dawn. Then you lie down, and for a while, you can't sleep. You think about Cassianus, about Aurelius, about all the layers of Rome stacked atop each other like bad poetry. You think about how long a woman like you can keep walking these edges before the ground shifts. Outside, an owl hoots. Inside, your breath slows, and slowly, you drift into a sleep filled with red silk, whispered names, and cities that pretend to forget. You wake to laughter. It's thin and mocking, bouncing off the cracked plaster walls like a coin flipped in a quiet room. You sit up slowly, still wrapped in sleep, and realize it's Livia and 2 other girls, already halfway into a new bottle of honey wine. Judging by the way one of them is giggling into her sleeve and the other is trying to pluck her own eyebrows with a dinner knife, it's been open a while. Flavia notices you and waves the bottle lazily. Morning, or whatever part of the day this is. You don't answer. Not yet. Your mind is still back in Trastevere, looping that conversation with Cassianus like a scratched wax tablet. Empires fall by forgetting who they are. What kind of man says something like that to a stranger in borrowed pearls? You rinse your face, press your palms to your eyes, and say nothing. By the time the bottle's empty and the room's quiet again, you're already out the door. Aurelius doesn't call for you right away. That's expected. It's not how the powerful operate, not in Rome. They let tension ripen. Let the information stew, so you wait, and you do what Roman women have always done in the meantime, you make yourself visible. You walk the marketplaces with measured boredom. You linger at perfume stalls but never buy. You visit the temple of Venus Erycina, not because you're devout, but because the right people always watch who shows up there. You spend an hour at the bathhouse, listening, not speaking, as matrons murmur about their sons' ambitions and their husbands' humiliations. It's amazing what people will say when they assume you're just decoration. You return home to find a note tucked into your shoe, left by someone with small handwriting and smaller patience. One word only, tomorrow. That night, you oil your hair with imported myrrh. Not because you're trying to impress anyone. Just because it makes you feel like you're one step ahead. The meeting is in an atrium house near the field of Mars. Quiet, shadowed, with ivy that grows too thick to be accidental. Inside, Aurelius is waiting alone. No guards this time. He pours wine. Doesn't offer any, so, he says, Cassianus. You nod once. He said things, Aurelius continues, that weren't entirely surprising. But still, unfortunate. You tilt your head. Because he's right. Aurelius lets that hang in the air for a moment too long, then, because he's clever. That's worse. He leans forward. There's talk, among the senators. Some think Rome needs a little shaking. Remind the provinces that the center still holds. Some think Cassianus is trying to be that tremor. You don't ask what he thinks. He won't answer honestly anyway. Instead, you ask, what do you want me to do? Aurelius swirls his wine. Nothing yet. He's leaving soon. But if he stays, we may need to remind him who built these streets. You nod. Historians still argue whether the Roman elite ever truly feared foreign visitors, or whether that fear was just another excuse to tighten their grip. There's no consensus. Just ink-stained scrolls and the occasional broken statue face down in a field. You leave the meeting feeling more tired than usual. Back home, Sabina greets you with a plate of olives and a question you don't want to answer. Do you ever get tired of pretending to be smarter than the men who pay you? You shrug. Only when they realize it. She laughs, but it's brittle. You eat the olives in silence, and then, because something about the night demands it, you decide to visit the Red Room. It's late. The moon is high. The streets are mostly empty except for the occasional muffled curse and the soft crunch of wet straw underfoot. You pass the same drunk twice. He doesn't notice. The Red Room hasn't changed. Still low-lit. Still smoky. Still filled with people who talk too quietly and drink too slowly. You sit alone. Not because you want solitude, but because tonight, attention feels heavy. You sip wine and watch the crowd with the dispassion of someone who's seen every act of this play before, but then, something unexpected. Cassianus walks in. He doesn't belong here. Not in this place, not with those shoes. But there he is, looking around like someone who expected a secret and found a memory instead. He sees you, and for a second, just one, you think he might leave, but he doesn't. He sits beside you. Didn't think I'd find you here, he says. You smile. I live here. He studies you for a moment. You're not like the others. You roll your eyes. Please don't say that. He laughs softly. No, I mean it. They're all trying to sell something. You're trying to listen. You sip your wine. It's quieter that way. He leans in. What do you think Rome really is? You pause, then, a story we tell ourselves. Over and over. Until it sounds like truth. He nods, like he's heard it before. Maybe in his own words, and then he says something strange, I'm leaving tomorrow. You nod. Back to your province? No, he says. To Egypt. That catches you off guard. Egypt isn't a place people visit casually. It's a place full of symbols, of crumbling temples, angry gods, and more than a little buried resentment. You say nothing. Cassianus finishes his drink and stands. Be careful, he says. Your city listens more than it speaks. Then he walks out. You don't sleep that night, not because you're scared. But because you don't know what you're supposed to feel. You've played many roles, mistress, informant, distraction, friend, but never observer. Not like this. Watching a man vanish into the dark, taking secrets with him you weren't quite able to steal, you light a lamp and sit near the window. The Subura is quieter than usual. Somewhere in the distance, a cart rattles over loose stones, the city breathes, you wonder how long it can keep breathing. You wonder what part of its lungs you are, and eventually, not from peace, but from sheer exhaustion, you fall asleep upright, with your cheek pressed to the cool windowsill and the faint scent of myrrh still clinging to your hair. But even in this, there's another layer, because the brothel you just walked through, the one that seems more museum than pleasure house, was once a battleground of politics. A place where the bodies of courtesans and freed women became tools of sabotage, sympathy, or silent survival. And you can't help but wonder if that graffiti-covered hallway was a kind of voting booth in itself, where names were scratched not for lust but for loyalty, back on the street. You pause by a fountain. It's cracked, dry, and forgotten. A boy sells roasted chickpeas nearby, and behind him, someone has scrawled Domitian drinks donkey milk in rushed charcoal script. A joke, maybe. Or a signal. You fish out a worn coin and toss it, not into the fountain, but into the boy's empty hand. He doesn't smile. Just runs off, vanishing like so many names lately, and still you hesitate, because you don't want to go home, not yet, so you walk, through alleys that used to feel safe, past temples that seem to glare at you now. A passing priest mutters a blessing you don't quite recognize, and your skin prickles. Was that Latin? Greek? Something older. You turn a corner and nearly collide with Sabina. She looks winded, her tunic dusty. I think they're changing the temple archives, she whispers, eyes wide. You blink. Again. She nods. But this time it's not just dates. It's entire people. The implication lands slowly. And cold, names you've heard. Friends you've known. Courtesans you've kissed. Mentors who once taught you how to bribe a censor without sounding like it. They're being edited out, she says softly, like it might stop the wind from carrying it, and you realize with a sinking weight, this isn't just about memory, it's about control. When you wake, there's sunlight pooling on the floor like melted bronze. Your back is sore. Your neck aches. You were supposed to be more careful than this, falling asleep in a window's reach, letting the whole neighborhood watch you turn into a statue, but it doesn't matter. Because as soon as you stand, as soon as you stretch and shift your weight toward the basin to wash your face, there's a knock, 3 times. Then once more. That pattern, Aurelius. You open the door with a face you hope looks composed. Walk with me, he says, already turning away. You don't ask where. That's not how these things work. He leads you down into the Aventine, away from the noise, away from the market clatter and burnt lentil smoke of the Subura. Here, it's cleaner. The stones underfoot have been recently swept. The houses are taller, their balconies draped with stitched awnings and smug little gardens. You pass a fountain with a lion's head spouting water into an overgrown basin. I don't trust silence, Aurelius says, suddenly. Not in this city. You glance at him, but say nothing. Cassianus is gone, he continues. He left on a grain ship last night. You already knew. You'd watched from your window as the lanterns bobbed downriver, following a boat that didn't belong to any merchant you recognized. The man had vanished the way smart men do, quietly, without farewells, taking only what couldn't be sold. So, you say. What do you want from me now? Aurelius pauses. There are always others. And that, more than anything, makes you tired. You let him talk. About names, about whispers, about senators who've been seeing too many astrologers and not enough priests. He lays out a dozen threads and waits for you to tug on one. You choose the quietest. A widow named Valeria who hosts salons for foreign-born scribes. That feels clean. Manageable. Fine, you say. I'll go. He nods, then steps away without looking back. You stand alone in the street, staring at the lion fountain and wondering whether the water is truly fresh, or just a circuit of illusion. The next day, you make your way to Valeria's villa. It's precisely what you expected, low-slung, tastefully cracked, and perfumed with something that's either imported sandalwood or very expensive wrought. The front door is opened by a servant with a face like the end of winter. He barely glances at you before leading you through a mosaic-floored atrium toward a garden courtyard. And there she is, Valeria, not young, not old. Not beautiful, but striking in the way a thundercloud is. She smiles, but it's the kind of smile people wear when they already know too much about you. I was hoping you'd come, she says. Word travels. You sit. You let her pour the wine. You sip and ask about poetry, about the Greeks, about the new Egyptian translations making their way into noble libraries. Valeria talks, but she's watching. Every question is a thread she's testing for tension. Every laugh is just enough to keep you unsure. It's a game, and you're not sure who's winning. Historians still debate whether Roman salons like Valeria's were truly intellectual havens or just high-class rumor mills where women wielded influence behind fans and syllables. Either way, they mattered. And the people who mattered came to them. As night falls, more arrive. Young men in draped tunics with scrolls under their arms, older men with tired eyes and better lies. A flute is played. Someone recites Horace badly. Someone else offers a theory about comets being divine punctuation marks. You listen, and slowly, you begin to notice the gaps. The names that aren't said. The questions that are almost asked. Valeria steers the room like a ship captain in thick fog. Nothing collides, but everything drifts. Later, as the crowd thins, she sits beside you. Did you know, she says, that Cleopatra once wrote a treatise on cosmetics? You blink. She mixed crushed pearls into vinegar and claimed it cured everything from wrinkles to betrayal. You raise an eyebrow. Did it work? Valeria shrugs. History doesn't say. But men still talk about her. You both smile, and in that smile is something dangerous. You leave before the last lamp is snuffed out. The servant sees you to the door with a nod that feels like a question. Outside, the air is thick and sour. Rain's coming, but not yet. You walk the long way back, your sandals slapping against damp stones. Back home, Livia is asleep. Sabina is reading something with too many folds to be a love letter. She doesn't look up when you enter. You sit at the edge of your straw mattress, still thinking about Valeria and the way she laughed when she spoke of Cleopatra. You wonder how many secrets that woman hides in her perfumes and philosophies, and then, without warning, you start to cry. It's not loud. It's not dramatic, it's just a small, tired thing. A quiet overflow, because maybe, just maybe, you're beginning to realize that being clever in Rome is not a survival strategy, it's just a longer game of drowning. you press the back of your hand to your mouth and breathe through it. Slowly. Deliberately. The way you did when you were 13 and first understood what your body was about to be used for. Sabina doesn't look up. But she sets the scroll down. Don't let them use your sadness, she says. You nod, though you're not sure you understand. The next morning, you wake to news that one of Valeria's scribes has been arrested. For what? No one is certain, but everyone suddenly remembers things he said. Things he probably didn't. Rome is funny that way. You don't attend Valeria's next salon. You wait. You watch. 2 days later, a different contact approaches you. A young man with sunburnt skin and the kind of voice that always sounds like a dare. I hear you were at Valeria's, he says. You raise an eyebrow. Should I be worried? He grins. Not yet. Then he passes you a note, just a name. And a date. You burn it after reading. Not because you have to. Just because it feels theatrical. Feels like something someone clever would do, and besides, by now you've learned, the ashes say as much as the fire, you don't sleep that night. Not well. You keep hearing Valeria's voice in the back of your head, light, amused, half-laced with venom. You think of her as you stare at the cracked ceiling, not as a threat. But as a mirror. What you could become. What you may already be. At dawn, you walk to the river. The banks are low this time of year, littered with reeds and broken amphorae. A fisherman eyes you warily, then turns away. There are no witnesses out here. Only birds and the rot of old barges. You sit. You wait. Somewhere upriver, a barge groans under a new cargo, grain, maybe. Or people. You remember a time, years ago, when you thought you could get out. That maybe cleverness would be a ladder, not a leash. That maybe, if you did everything right, said everything just so, you could climb your way into safety. Into stillness. Into some version of Rome where a girl like you didn't have to flinch at every knock. Every name passed beneath a door, but Aurelius was right. There are always others. And Rome doesn't let anyone stop walking, only change the direction of their fall. You rise, brush off the dust from your cloak, and walk back toward the streets you know too well. A child runs past with a stolen apple. A priest mutters at a column with a cracked base. And in a window, a woman stares out, blinking once, slowly, as if weighing something you'll never be told. You nod to no one. You speak to no one, but in your mind, the next thread is already unraveling. You follow it. Because that's what survival is here, not evasion, not escape, just momentum. You're up before sunrise the day of the meeting. Not because you're nervous, though, fine, maybe a little, but because the city sounds different in the dark. You like that. Rome, in its rare stillness, smells less like sweat and vinegar, more like damp earth and baked stone. The baker's boy shuffles past your doorway. Somewhere, a rooster sounds deeply offended by its own existence. You braid your hair back and pick the least rumpled stola you own. Practical. Modest. Something unmemorable. You leave before Livia stirs, and Sabina's already gone. The name on that burned scrap of parchment? Nerva. A mid-level official in the censor's office. Not a senator. Not a street thug. Just the kind of man whose ink-stained fingers could quietly erase people. You arrive early. The forum is already yawning open. Merchants erect tents like they're staking claims on patches of dry sea. Public criers are warming up their voices. One is literally gargling with wine. Nerva is seated beneath a colonnade, surrounded by scrolls, scribes, and an unsettling number of empty cups. His toga is crisp but his eyes are tired, and you get the sense he hasn't left this spot in 3 days. He motions you forward. You're punctual, he says. That's dangerous in this city. Better than being late, you offer. That can get you stabbed. He smiles without humor. You sit across from him, the stone bench cold even through the layers of fabric. He waves away his assistants, and for a few moments, it's just you and him, and the soft scritch-scratch of the city waking up. I need a list, he says. You blink. Of what? People like you. Ah. There it is, like me, how? You ask, though you already know, smart. Invisible. Capable of making a man disappear without drawing a knife. You lean back. What makes you think I know people like that? He chuckles. Because Rome is built on people like that. And because your name was whispered by someone whose whispers matter. He doesn't say who. He doesn't have to. You ask what this is about, really. He shrugs like it's a minor nuisance. There's a new grain tax proposal. A few senators want it passed quietly. A few don't. I don't care which side you land on, I care about leverage. About knowing who's where, who's useful, who can be bought, and who needs a very gentle push off a metaphorical cliff. You nod slowly. And if I refuse? He smiles again, but this one's sharper. Then I put your name on a list. One with fewer polite options. So that's how it is, you leave the meeting without another word. Your sandals scuff the paving stones a little too loudly. As you pass a group of magistrates arguing about whether a pigeon in the basilica is a bad omen, you mutter something extremely unholy under your breath. Rome really is the most exhausting city on earth. By evening, you're back in your apartment, the table cluttered with olive pits and scraps of half-burned wax tablets. Sabina watches you but doesn't ask. Instead, she reads aloud from a scroll, something Greek, probably Socrates pretending to be confused about everything. You let her voice wash over you while you scribble names. You do know people. Too many, a freed woman in the laundry district who knows what stains are blood and what's beetroot. A former soldier who sells cheap perfume but still folds his bed sheets with military precision. An aging mosaicist who once hid a fugitive under his workshop and charged rent. Each name is a doorway. Each doorway, a risk. You pause. Then burn the list, because you're not ready yet. Because Rome teaches you early, whoever writes the names, holds the knife. Historians still argue whether these kinds of informal networks, what we might now call underground information economies, were real or romanticized. But the patterns appear too often in the scrolls, in letters, in half-redacted imperial reports to be coincidence. The empire didn't just run on laws and armies. It ran on favors. Whispers. Coffeeless coffee shop meetings before dawn. The next day, you meet with Aurelius again, this time in a cramped back room behind a bakery that smells of anise and fatigue. He looks worse. Not thinner. Just, more used. Like a tunic washed too many times. I heard about Nerva, he says. You say nothing. You're not going to give him what he wants. Are you? Again, silence. He leans forward. Because if you do, I can't protect you anymore. You smile, gently, not unkindly. You never could. And for once, he doesn't argue. Instead, he hands you a scroll. It's not just Nerva, he says. There's movement in the Senate. Names are being erased from temple records. Rewritten, in some cases. Priests bribed, augurs threatened. The religious archives are being tampered with. Someone's rewriting legitimacy itself. You unroll the scroll and scan it. The list is long. Senators. Priests. Even a Vestal Virgin's name has been struck through and replaced in a different hand. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the bakery's damp walls. Because when people start rewriting who has divine favor in Rome, it's not politics anymore, it's war, a quiet, parchment and ink war. But war all the same. Later, walking home, you detour through a poorer district. One of those maze-like warrens where the buildings lean in like gossiping crones and the street vendors never seem to pack up. You find a young boy playing knucklebones on the curb. He's missing 2 front teeth and he's cheating. You kneel. Where's your mother? He shrugs. Gone. Father? He shrugs again, you sigh. Want a job? His eyes brighten. What kind? The kind where you listen, then forget what you heard. He grins. That sounds like lying. Exactly. You leave him with a task, trail a certain priest. Watch who he talks to. Report back with just enough detail to be useful, but nothing precise enough to be dangerous. If he gets caught, he salutes like a drunk centurion and sprints off barefoot, and just like that, you've recruited a new agent. You return home with stale bread and a headache. Flavia is gone, off somewhere chasing gossip about a wine cellar who might be poisoning his competitors with spoiled must. Sabina's asleep in your bed, a scroll drooped across her chest. You sit beside her and close your eyes. Rome is shifting. Not loudly. Not all at once, but in the tremors of temple steps. The edits in official records. The missing names, someone's trying to control memory, and if they succeed, you won't just lose your life, you'll lose your shape, because in Rome, history isn't just written by the victors, it's rewritten by the survivors. You fall asleep with ink on your fingers and someone else's secrets echoing in your dreams. You get used to the silences first. Not the peaceful kind, but the dense, off-balance ones, like a breath held too long. Rome is quieter now, not because anything's settled, but because too many people are waiting to see what gets rewritten next. You feel it in the forums, in the temples, even in the bathhouses. There's conversation, yes, but only in the safe lanes. Nothing too specific. Nothing too certain. You and Sabina trade glances more often than words. You've both noticed the same pattern, the disappearance of certainty. Once, you would have laughed at that. Certainty in Rome. But now it's not the usual chaos. Now it feels curated. Even Flavia's lost some of her fire. She still jokes. Still drinks too much wine at dinner, but her eyes search corners now. She starts asking you and Sabina things twice, as if confirming you all still remember the same details. She even catches herself writing names down and hiding the lists in ridiculous places. Once you find a wax tablet behind a loose brick under the stove. She shrugs. Better safe than vanished. You try to keep the rhythm of days. You still visit the markets, though vendors now speak in euphemisms. You still light a lamp at the household shrine, though you no longer say names out loud. Gods, ancestors, officials, anyone might disappear next. Best to keep your devotions vague, and then one morning, your name almost vanishes. It starts with a letter, delivered by hand, sealed in green wax, an uncommon color. You break it carefully. Inside is a single sheet of papyrus, neatly inked, and written in the stiff legalese that makes your stomach clench. To the citizen presently occupying the dwelling at Insula Vetii, 3rd floor, you pause. That's you. But no name. You read further. It's a formal notice from the scribe's registry. Your file, apparently, has come under review. There's no accusation. Just an inconsistency in public record. Your birth date appears in 3 different forms. Your mother's name is listed as both Lucia and Flavia. Your father's occupation is given, amusingly, as goat consultant, in one column. At the bottom, in smaller script, we request clarification within 5 days. Failure to confirm identity may result in administrative nullification. You sit very still. Nullification. It sounds tidy. Bureaucratic. But you've seen what it looks like in practice. People erased from rolls, from histories, from memory. Not dead, just unremembered. You show the letter to Sabina. She reads it, lips pressed tight. This is pressure, she says. They want you to show your hand. To prove you still exist, according to their rules. Do I answer it? She shrugs. Do you want to be confirmed or forgotten? You think about that for too long. By evening, Flavia has forged 3 different identities for you. One traces your lineage to a freedman from Ostia. Another to a minor priesthood in Etruria. The third just lists you as a traveling scribe with no permanent ties. Take your pick, she says, then yawns. Or mix them all. They can't track what doesn't hold still. You ask her how she knows how to do this, she doesn't answer. The next day, you burn the letter, not dramatically. Just in the lamp flame, piece by piece. Ash flakes drift into your tea, then you vanish yourself, just a little. You avoid main roads. You speak less. You stop giving your name at bathhouses or bakeries. You make yourself harder to pin down, and Rome doesn't fight it. You start to notice other people doing the same. Traders who no longer use coins stamped with current emperors. Priests who leave inscriptions half-finished. Even prostitutes begin to go by titles instead of names, the red veil, honey voice, she of the green anklet. Historians still argue whether this period marked the rise of anonymized urban life in Rome, or whether anonymity was simply the last defense people had. You don't care either way, because now you live in the gaps. In the unsaid. In the echo, but the thing about disappearing is that it makes you see what clings hardest. Some truths refuse to dissolve, like this one, someone's collecting names, you find a list, left carelessly in a public latrine, too careless, you think. It's written on wax, but the stylus marks are deep, as though carved in anger or haste. There are 7 names. You recognize 3, a senator, a midwife, a street poet. All vanished, next to each is a symbol. And at the bottom, a name you don't expect, yours. You take the tablet, wrap it in cloth, and say nothing. Back home, Sabina and Livia listen. They go very quiet. You don't discuss what to do next, not yet. Instead, you pull the shutters closed. You relight the lamp. And you all sit around the small table, staring at the tablet. Somewhere outside, a procession passes. You can't tell what they're celebrating. The chants are garbled. The color's wrong. You wonder how many of those marching remember why they started, and how many are just moving to the rhythm, too scared to stop. You don't sleep that night. Sabina lies with her eyes open, unfocused, while Livia murmurs to herself in fragments. Like someone trying to rehearse a part for a play no one ever wrote. You lie between them, hands folded across your stomach, thinking about the list. The names. Yours among them. By morning, the lamp is still burning. The wax tablet sits where you left it. None of you speak, you don't have to. By now, it's clear that the list wasn't lost, it was planted. Meant to be found. Meant to be read. Meant to send a message, though none of you agree on what that message is. They're warning us, Sabina says finally, over the first cup of bitter tea. No, Livia replies. They're recruiting. You lift your head. Recruiting? She shrugs. Think about it. Anyone who finds that tablet and recognizes the names. That's someone who remembers. Someone dangerous, or useful. You consider that. It makes a dark kind of sense. But useful for what? Sabina asks. Livia looks at you. You said it before. This isn't just politics. It's reality control. Maybe they want help shaping it. Or maybe they want witnesses, so history doesn't slip entirely. The phrase lingers in the room, so history doesn't slip entirely. You'd laugh, if it weren't so terrifying. There was a time when history was something you studied. Quoted, invoked. Now it feels like something you're hiding in a drawer under the bread knife. By midday, the city feels wrong again, the lights too flat. The streets too empty. You pass a shrine that used to be dedicated to Mercury, but the inscription is now worn down to nothing, scrubbed or sanded away. A child sells fruit nearby, and you hear him call the god Markan like it's always been that way. You feel it then. Not fear, not anger, but fatigue. The kind that burrows behind your ribs and takes up residence. Rome is slipping, and you're running out of places to stand, That evening, you get another letter. This one has no wax seal. Just a scrap of parchment folded into itself. Tucked between your door hinges, it says only, tonight. Field of Mars. Where the shadows point east. Bring no names. You start the morning with bread you didn't pay for and water you don't trust. Rome has entered that season again, too dry for comfort, too hot for conspiracy. And yet here you are, cloaked in linen so thin it might as well be a sigh, wandering through the Subura as if today were any other day, except it isn't, because overnight, a name has disappeared, not scratched out, not burned, vanished, gone from temple rolls, from birth records, even from a private contract filed with the Scribes Guild. The man was real yesterday. And now, if you bring him up, people squint as though you've mispronounced something, and what's worse, you don't even like the man. He was forgettable, arrogant. Always underpaying courtesans and overpaying astrologers. But you remember him. And remembering, suddenly, feels dangerous, so you test it, you ask 3 street vendors. One doesn't know him. One has heard the name, maybe, once. The third stares at you and says, that man never existed. Then she drops a cabbage and forgets why she picked it up. You return to your insula with a tight stomach. Sabina is waiting by the door. She doesn't smile. There's something wrong with the temple lists, she says before you speak. And I think we need to stop looking. You tilt your head. You first. I tried to double-check those scrolls at the Temple of Apollo. They were guarded. Not just by priests, by guards. Armed ones. Quiet ones. The kind who don't blink enough. You nod. And they told me I wasn't on the allowed list. You frown. What list? She leans in. The one with the people who still exist. That lands hard. You sit together for a while, not talking. Not because there's nothing to say, but because everything you say now feels like it's being counted. Outside, a cart breaks a wheel. Someone swears in Oscan. A dog steals a figure, normal sounds. Except none of this feels normal anymore. Flavia arrives just before noon, breathless. I followed Nerva again, she says. But I don't think it was him. You frown. Explain. He was moving wrong. Slower. Like someone trying to be him. A double? She shrugs. Or a ghost. Or maybe I'm losing my mind. You look at her. Then at Sabina. You're all thinking it, what if this isn't about politics? What if this isn't even about Rome? What if it's about reality control? You laugh, softly. We sound like bad poets. Flavia sighs. Maybe. But bad poets usually die last. You know it's time to make a choice, so you gather everything, scrolls, wax tablets, scribbled notes, stolen receipts, fragments of graffiti. You lock yourselves inside. And for 2 days, you map it. Names. Dates. Connections. Erasures. You build a living index of what Rome is supposed to be, and what it's becoming, and the pattern starts to show. It's not just prostitutes or politicians disappearing, it's bridges. Festivals. Old laws. Historians still argue whether the Flavian-era record loss was an accident, a fire, maybe, or a scribe's careless ink spill. But some fringe theorists suggest it was deliberate. A cultural culling. A controlled deletion of inconvenient memory, and now, sitting here among your documents, you think they might be right, because this isn't erasure by fire, it's erasure by redesign. Someone is reshaping what Rome was, so they can dictate what it is. You know who benefits, you always knew, so you go to Nerva, not the double. Not the street version, the real Nerva. You find him in a garden outside the walls, wearing linen, barefoot, feeding birds. You're early, he says, without turning. You sit beside him. I brought no figs. He laughs. Shame. I was hoping. Then silence, then, why? He doesn't pretend not to know what you mean. I was tired, he says. Of chaos. Of politics being louder than meaning. So I thought, what if I could just rewrite it? You. No. Not just me. Never just one. But someone has to start the ink flowing. You watch the birds. They don't care, Nerva, you say, voice low, people are disappearing. No, he replies. They're being reorganized. You shake your head. Same thing. He closes his eyes. We used to build legacies with marble. Now we build them with memory. Even false ones. Especially false ones. You both sit in the breeze. Cicadas rasp in the distance. You know it won't hold. You whisper, maybe not, he says. But for a little while, Rome will be quiet. People won't argue about what happened. Because they won't remember. You stand, he doesn't stop you, back in the city. You walk differently. Not because you're afraid. Because you're deciding, and when you get home, you do something radical, you burn your notes, not all of them. Just the originals, the ones with blood on them. The ones that remember too much, you keep a few fragments, tucked into a sandal, stitched into a pillow. But most of it, you let go, because this is how Rome survives, not through truth, but through versions, and if someone's going to choose what version survives. It might as well be you. Later that night, as Sabina and Livia sleep, you sit by the window, the moon is fat and smug. The streets are calm. Somewhere, a drunk man serenades a cat, and you think, maybe you didn't stop anything. But maybe you marked it, like a scribe slipping a different name into a line of poetry, like a whisper in a crowd full of silence, like memory, pretending it forgot. You rest your head against the window frame. The cool stone soothes the places in you still buzzing with questions. Outside, Rome breathes. Slow now. Distant, shadows stretch across tiled roofs and broken walls, softening everything into forgettable shapes. Even the Tiber seems to hush, its murmur flattened into lullaby by the weight of night. You let your eyes blur. You listen to the nothingness between footsteps, between breaths. In this quiet, the city doesn't feel ancient or cruel or clever, it just is. A sleeping beast. A parchment too faded to read. You feel the tiredness at last. Not the exhaustion of running or fearing, but that quiet, marrow-deep sleepiness that means you've seen enough for one day. Somewhere in the city, a scribe begins his shift. He sharpens his stylus without thinking, stares at the wax tablet before him, and frowns, because today's list feels shorter than yesterday's, even though the names haven't changed. He shrugs, blinks, and starts copying anyway. Down the street, a statue's nose falls off. No one notices. You close your eyes. Behind your eyelids, you see the city's map, not streets or aqueducts, but the other kind. The secret one. A map of absences. Of memory edits. Of names dropped like stitches no one bothered to pick up. You see how easy it is now. Not just to erase, but to replace, to swap meaning like coins. To sand down edges until a fact becomes a story, then a rumor, then a joke, and you wonder, not if you'll forget, but when. You hold on to one last image, Nerva, barefoot, feeding birds. That tiny moment of stillness. That illusion of peace built on silence, you keep it because it's flawed. Because it didn't try to lie to you. A soft breeze filters through the window. You inhale it like a question. The cat's gone quiet. The drunk man is done singing, only the moon lingers now, nosy as ever, peering into dreams it didn't earn. You don't mind, because when morning comes, you'll wake up in the same bed, in the same Rome, in a version that might already be shifting beneath your feet, but for now, for just a little while, you exist, and that's enough. Sweet dreams.